Hello, and welcome back to this session on Object Pool Design Pattern. This video is part of a 20 hours Udemy course where we cover hundreds of real-world design pattern scenarios. What is Object Pool Design Pattern? The Object Pool Design Pattern is a creational design pattern that manages a pool or a cache of reusable objects. Its aim is to improve performance and resource utilization by reusing objects instead of creating new ones. This pattern is particularly useful when the cost of object creation, initialization, or destruction is high. In the object pool pattern, a pool of objects is created and managed by a pool manager. When an object is needed, instead of creating a new object from scratch, the pool manager provides an existing object from the pool. When the object is no longer needed, it is returned to the pool for future reuse. This way, the overhead of object creation and destruction is reduced. By reusing objects from the pool instead of creating new ones, the object pool pattern can improve performance, reduce memory consumption, and minimize the overhead of object creation and destruction. It's worth noting that the object pool pattern should be used when the cost of object creation and initialization is high and the number of objects needed is variable. If the number of objects needed is fixed or low, the benefit of object pool pattern may be diminished. Hello and welcome back. In this example, we're going to implement a connection pool system using the object pool design pattern. And we're going to start by importing a random time module, and then we'll also have a connection object that instantiates a connection and set the connection to false. And then the connection object is going to have a connection method that connects the connection object that sets its connection to true. Basically, we're just simulating this. Connection set to false means there is no connection, and connection set to true means there is a connection. And then we're also going to have another method to disconnect the object, which will say disconnecting from server, and then will give us a little moment, and then we'll set that connection to false. So basically, the connection object will use the connect method to set connection to true, and then the disconnect method to set connection to false. The time sleep is just to help simulate connection. And then we implement the connection pool manager that takes in the maximum connection that we want to have at a time and instantiate that connection, and also is going to take in two variables for keeping the connection that are available and then the connection that are in use. And then we're going to be setting those connections. So right here, the moment we call the connection pool manager, is going to set for us whatever number of connections we have. It's maybe 2, 3, or 4 or 5 connections. It sets those connections for us into the available connections list. Then again, we run the acquire connections method, and the acquire connections will check if there is any connection that is available in the connection list, and if there is, it's going to pop out that connection. And because that connection has been popped out, it's going to store, it's been popped out, and that means it's no longer available in the available connection method. So we're going to store it in the in-use connections, and then we change the status of that connection to connect, and then we return the connection. And if there is no connection, or if there is no available connection in the list, then it should return that no connection available in the pool. So it only uses the amount of connections that we have for the pool. And if we want to release a connection, we do the method release connections. And basically, what we need to do for that is to reset the connection to how it was. So we use the disconnect method to reset the connection, remove the connection from the in-use connection, and also add back the connection to all the available connections. So when we're not using it again, it removes it from the list of in-use connections and then put it in the available connection list. Let's implement the code here and instantiate our connection manager, and then let's acquire two connections, con1 and 2. So here we use the acquire connections. Actually, the moment we start acquiring connection, it's going to run through the connection method of the connection, and that changes the state of the connection to connected. And of course, we should be seeing this output. Let's run this output from the code here. I think it's gonna make more sense because we're using timer. So I'm gonna run that code, and you'll see it's saying connecting to server, then connected ID2, and then connecting to server for 1, and then connected ID1. So because we ran for 2 connections, it has connected for the first connection and the second connection. Then I'm going to run a print to use the connection just to be sure that these connections are available. I'm going to call their IDs. So I'll call the print using connection, and then just wait for a little time, and then let's say this is going to a server to pick up some stuff, and then I'm going to do the same thing and use the second connection, and that will also show that the connection is available. So you can see I'm using timer to hold the time that the processes are done. Now let's check the connection that is available. I'm just going to put in a print command that prints out the available connection. It gets the length of the available connection list, and then the length of the used connection list. And if we run this code right here, you're going to see that it actually connects to the servers, the first and second servers, and then it shows the available connection and the used connection. Because we use 2 connections, we have available connection being 1 and the used connection being 2, because we actually acquired 2 connections here. Let's now release these 2 connections that we've already used. We're going to do that by calling the release connection method of the connection manager. So we release the first connection, and then we release the second connection. So now those connections are removed from the used connections, which are 2, and then pulled back to the available connection. Now let's run this code again so we see what output the available connection will give. So I'm just going to do that and run that again. And you can see it does the first and second connection, and then use those connections, released, say the available connection is 1, and then it disconnected those connections. Use the disconnect method because we're calling the release connection. Use the disconnect method to disconnect the connection 2 and connection 1, and then it says available connections are 3 and used connection is 0. So with the object pool design pattern, we're able to manage the use of this connection. We instantiated 3 connections with the connection manager. We acquired 2. We use the time, sleep, and random to simulate activity with those connections, and then we check the connections at the point where we use 2. We had 2 connections being used, and then we release those connections, and then it shows that no connection is in use and available connection is 3. This video is part of a 20 hours Udemy course where we cover hundreds of real-world design pattern scenarios. The course is called Design Pattern in Python with Real-World Code Examples. We showed via practical coding how design pattern is implemented in real-world scenarios like event manager, catch, database connection codes, document management code, creating optimized configuration settings, login frameworks, GUI framework codes, plugin systems, game development codes, payment gateway, document generators, computer graphics generation codes, financial model code pattern, resource pooling, object pooling in ORMs, website creation, database query codes, language translator, web application framework creation, banking system codes, organizational chart creation, file system, interpreter, menu system, text formatting code, authentication code, authorization code, API for OS, document management system, create proxies, event handling, middleware in web development, workflow system, undo redo functionality in apps, job scheduler scenarios, parsers, chart applications, drawing applications, notification system, distributed system, booking system, workflow management system, sorting algorithm, file compression utility, and many more. If you are really serious about your career in programming, you have to get this video. And you don't have to be a Python programmer to use it. Use the link in the description to get the best price for this course on the Udemy platform.